Hello and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie. I'm the senior editor here, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Zeus Kerravala, founder of ZK Research and prominent industry analyst. Zeus, it's great to have you with us. How are you doing today?
It's always great to be with you guys. So, it's we're in the summer, so all things are good here.
Excellent. Yeah, good to hear. Good to hear. And yeah, today we're going to be focusing on a very kind of interesting topic, and that is of Zendesk and kind of its outlook on the future now it has been acquired by
Yeah.
an investor group. I mean, but first things first, has this $10.2 billion deal taken you by surprise at all?
Um, I mean, yes and no. The low valuation certainly did, but there had been pressure on them to be acquired. I think just 4 months ago they were offered $17 billion, right? So, which they turned down, and then they tried to buy Motive, which is SurveyMonkey's parent company. And I think the idea there was that they would use SurveyMonkey to collect data and analytics, and we've talked about the importance of customer experience and be able to turn them into a different type of company. Now that deal fell apart, which left them with no immediate growth opportunity. So I think from there, the company had to take a look at what they were doing, and I guess they decided to take the $10 billion offer after all. So from now, in fairness to them, I will say 4 months ago, I don't think anybody saw, kind of the collapse of the stock market coming, and every every SaaS-based company out there is taking a pretty big hit from a valuation perspective, right? So it's not just them, but I thought the $17 billion valuation back then was more than fair. So am I surprised? I'm not surprised they got acquired because their plan B was to go make an acquisition of SurveyMonkey and grow it that way. That didn't happen. So then they had to go back to plan A, which was be acquired. But certainly the low valuation they got was a bit surprising.
Yeah, that's very interesting as you say. I mean, it was in February, I think it kind of was valued at 17 billion, and I turned that down directly because I thought it was
Yeah.
the valuation of the company, and now it's kind of 10.2 billion. So I think that's very interesting, and it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on what that low valuation means for the rest of the tech industry.
Yeah, it's certainly a warning shot, right? That you think back to a couple of years ago, Charlie, we had all these unicorns that private companies valued at 1 billion, $10 billion, things like that, and certainly there was a lot of late round investing done as well. Like you think TalkDesk got a $10 billion valuation, right, with their last round. So I suspect if they were to be reevaluated today, it wouldn't be 10 billion. Not that there's anything wrong with TalkDesk; they're a very good company, just because just overall valuations have come down, right? We saw Zoom trading at 500 a share, and they're a fraction of that today. Same with Ring Central. So I think we were in this weird phase. You can almost look at it as a bubble where investors were rewarding growth over everything. And I remember talking to people, at companies like Cisco, where they weren't growing at the same rates, but they were churning out a lot of profits, and they were sort of wondering what happened to regular valuation, where investors valued making money, right? And we kind of forgot about the importance of that. It was grow at all costs, and it's a little bit like the WeWork story or something like that, right? Or the early days of Uber, where hyper growth was the name of the game, and then eventually that came back and beat you. So I think for a lot of the companies, especially the smaller ones that saw crazy valuations, I think they need to rethink their business model here and take a look at how you grow profitably, not just grow at all expenses. And that's going to have a pretty interesting impact. Now, from an industry impact, also, the valuation on a lot of these companies that we follow, 8x8, and even companies like that have come way down. And so I would expect to see some M&A activity here. If I were one of the bigger companies, a Cisco, a Zoom, a Microsoft, even a Ring Central, I might be looking at some of these companies as potential acquisition candidates.
Hmm. Yeah, that's lots of really kind of fascinating insights, and
Yeah.
I've really thought it was kind of interesting to kind of hear your commentary on all those kind of various other kind of Zendesk competitors and how this is not just a kind of Zendesk problem, but it is a wide ranging problem, and it will be interesting to see if
Well,
companies like.
I do think the other point it underscores is the importance of building a platform,
Hmm.
right? Like Zendesk is a good product company. And I think if you look at every good software company that became big, and I don't mean a little big, but really big, as Salesforce and Oracle and Microsoft, right? They all had one thing in common, right? They made that shift to platform, and they allowed others to build product on top of yours, and they found a way to be more than that, just that one product. And Zendesk was working on that, but they couldn't execute on that, right? And so that's why they, now, not that 10 billion is a low valuation. I mean, 10 billion is 10 billion, right? But clearly, when you look at the software companies that become really big, they make that shift. And you think back to companies even like like a Citrix, where years ago they were one of the high flying companies, in the tech industry, and they couldn't make that pivot to platform, and then they had to go private and retool and things like that. And that's essentially what Zendesk is doing now, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and it will be interesting, as you say, to see how it grows in the future as well, because from an M&A perspective, it has been quite quiet, and obviously a lot of that's due to the fallout, the momentum, the point that you made earlier. But
Yeah.
kind of it's made some CRM kind of innovations in the past couple of months, but not much more has come out of Zendesk. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes from now on. But kind of reflecting on, there was quite a big saga around the Momentive fallout. What did you kind of make of the months that preceded this deal?
Yeah, well, that was uh, that was really their go forward plan. They were going to take the data from SurveyMonkey, and they talked about that, about being able to build um, using the data to get more into customer experience and building an analytic platform. And so they still need something like that. I don't know if the PE firm wants to take another run at that. Obviously, I would imagine the valuation on them has got to be lower as well. There's lots of good, if you look at the Gartner MQs that have anything to do with AI. There's lots and lots of smaller companies in that space. So I would think that they would want some kind of AI-based analytic engine as well. Those are awfully hard to build yourself. You could go leverage ones from Google and AWS and things like that, but I would guess that acquisitions will be back in play for them, because that would to me that would be the path to growth. And I would think that the PE firm would wind up looking at um, other companies that were similar to Zendesk, that perhaps have a much lower valuation than they have. So
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think you kind of alluded to a bit of Zendesk kind of future moves, the kind of the options that they can take in terms of kind of not not maybe creating their own analytics engines, but maybe acquiring somebody from, as you say, maybe kind of a visionary from the Magic Quadrant for AI analytics platforms, or maybe
yeah,
kind of turning to a Google.
Momento's a good company though, and it would be good to see him go after that again. And
Hmm.
that would create a good, nice growth engine for him. So, but
Yeah.
I think the purchase price they were looking at then was pretty high. So,
Yeah, I know it's quite
yeah.
quite an early stage as well, but it would also be kind of interesting. What else do you think the future holds for Zendesk? Can you give kind of any other kind of further insight on where you think they might go from here now? The acquisition is kind of
Well,
starting to go through.
yeah, I think the key, Charlie, is they have they we live in a world now where competitive differentiation is based on what you do with data, right? You look at all companies, be out there, Five9 in the contact center space, even Veeam, who's a storage company. It doesn't really matter what company you talk to. What they're talking about now is how to make more of the data they have. So Zendesk obviously has a lot of data, and the question is, what kind of analytics they build around that, and then what are the data they bring in to complement that, right? So they could go out, and there's been rumors of them moving into the contact center space forever, right? I don't. That's a hard pivot to make, just because they would have to actually go out and buy a contact center company. It's hard to build your own calling platform and things. But certainly they could, keep encroaching on that and become more customer service oriented, and perhaps even partner with companies that look at web analytics and things like that. So I do think that that's you know probably the number one question is what. There's lots and lots of paths they could go down. The question is which one they will go down. But I do think there's lots of options out there. There's plenty of companies that generate data, and there's plenty of companies that do analytics. And it's probably my guess is all bets are open, right? Are valid right now, and it's which ones the PE firm thinks they can get a pretty good deal on to bring them into the fold.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess
Yeah.
only time will tell, but it's going to be a few fascinating months ahead
Yeah.
for Zendesk. It'll be
Well,
interesting. Yeah.
well, general rule of thumb, even on car shopping and stuff, is don't go to a dealership knowing the car you want to buy, right? Because you'll get your worst deal. So I think the parent company would be, perhaps have a wide, a number of different types of companies they could bring in to complement what Zendesk does. But then you find one where you wind up getting a pretty good valuation because the markets are so soft right now. And I would guess even private companies too. The proclivity to jump into one of these private companies late stage with a high valuation is going to go down for investors. So there you may find some private companies that had crazy high valuations being able to take a deal to get acquired, to complete their exit, right? Because certainly an IPO exit would looks like it would be challenging today.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's lots of food for thought there as we move into the future. And Zest, it's always great to talk to you and learn kind of so
Yeah.
much about the tech company. So thank you very much for the tech and the enterprise technology world even.
And
So thanks for
and
joining.
while this was just the latest acquisition,
Yeah.
Charlie, I think we should expect to see more. So
Mm.
I guess I'll see you back on this in a couple of weeks when we have the next one or something.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And so thanks again, Zeus, and
Yeah.
thank you to everybody for watching. Bye for now.